Welcome to a brand new Timmy's Top 10. And today we're going to look at the top 10 instants and interrupts of 1993 and 1994. Now to make this list, I've looked at the 3 core sets, A, B, U, and the 4 horseman sets, Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends, and the Dark. When you take the cards from this card pool, you get to a total of 103 instants and interrupts. Now, to make a list out of the top 10, the first thing I did was I combined the instants and the interrupts, because we're playing mainly according to the modern rules, meaning we have the stack, and that kind of replaced the interrupt ability. Now, what did interrupt do? How did it used to work? Well, interrupt would come before the instant. So remember, you didn't have a stack, so everything would happen at the same time. A lightning bolt and a giant growth would happen at the same time. But if you would then have an interrupt, that interrupt would happen first, so it would get priority. I guess in modern day Magic, they did create this mechanic called split second. That's kind of like how an interrupt used to work as well. Now, in this case, again, I've combined the 2 lists. So I have 103 cards to choose from. Now, I've made my decision for the top 10 based on 3 criteria. Now, the first one is I've looked at the impact of the card that it has in a game of Magic. Like, how big is the impact? Is it really a game changer? And then I've looked at the playability of the card. Is this a card that is being played in a wide variety of decks, or do you only see it in like specific combo decks or specific strategies? And of course, the wider the card is being used and the more often it's being used, the more chances that it has to actually appear here on the list. And then the last criteria is a bit of a debatable one because it says top 8 appearances. What I basically mean by that is how well is the card doing in tournament Magic at old school events. Now, of course, this is purely based on my own experiences. I play a lot of old school Magic. I'm at a lot of tournaments. I make a lot of videos about it. So I'm just going to see what cards do I see often in the top decks at the tournaments. Okay, so now that you know my criteria, it's almost time to jump into the top 10. But before I do, first a message from the sponsor of this video, 3for1 Trading, because they have a very exciting April sale. Yes, and they're calling their April sale the Spring Sale, and it's from April the 10th to the 15th. And the cool thing is their whole inventory is 5% off. And they also offer free worldwide shipping on all orders over the $500 or euros. So check out their vast selection of eternal staples, high-end foils, and sealed products. So you can now use the code SPRINGSALE24 to enjoy free, fully insured worldwide shipping and 5% off on their stock. Now, this is excluded from the sale is the Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Now, I don't know what that is, but I'm just going to repeat it. The Outlaws of Thunder Junction. I do like the way it sounds, but is that a new set or something? I have no idea. And it also doesn't include the non-MTG sealed product sale items and gaming supplies. But I mean, all the other cards, like the old school stuff, you can get 5% off. And of course, that free shipping from April the 10th up to the 15th. So that's a pretty big deal, you know. So go out there and, you know, buy some cards. But first, let's continue with our top 10 instants here at Timmy Talks. Okay, and we are back and ready to kick off this top 10. And on number 10, we actually have a favorite of mine. This is Fork. Now, Fork is an interrupt from red for 2 red that reads, any sorcery or instant spell just cast is doubled. Treat Fork as an exact copy of target spell, except that Fork remains red. Copy and original may have different targets. Now, I may say this too often, but I'm just going to say it again. I feel that Fork is underplayed. I mean, Fork in a format with so much power, right? Ancestral Recall, Time Twister, Time Walk, and then you've got a Fork. You can double that up, right? Especially the Ancestral Recall and the Time Walk. It's just insane. You can copy your own, but probably your opponent is also playing those cards. And you can copy those as well. On top of that, there are a lot of restricted cards that you may want to copy, right? Also think of Mind Twist. You copy the Mind Twist, you also twist the hand of your opponent. That's just, I mean, that's poetic justice to me. I like that. And the cool thing is, Fork isn't even restricted, so you can play 4 of these. I mean, 4 would be a bit much, I guess, but I would definitely, you know, start playing 1, maybe even 2. If you play direct damage, Fork is like your 5th lightning bolt, right? If you're playing counter burn, Fork is just another way to, you know, get some more turns going with your Time Walk. I mean, this is good. This is a good card in my opinion. Again, it's my opinion, underplayed, and I'm just going to put it here in this top 10 on number 10. We're kicking off the list with Fork. That's the end of the debate. And now we're moving on to number 9. And on number 9, we find a green classic, an all-time favorite. It is Berserk. So this is an instant for 1 green that reads, until end of turn, target creature's current power doubles and against the trample ability. If it attacks, target creature is destroyed at the end of turn. This spell cannot be cast after current turn's attack is completed. Now, I mean, Berserk, man, I love the art. I love what it does. This is in every green Stompy deck. You want to have at least 1, 2, and maybe, depending on how aggressive you are, 3 or even 4 copies in your deck. This is so explosive. This can generate like a turn 2 win. If all the stars align, that can actually happen. It's also quite good in other decks like a red-green build, or you can splash it in. It's just 1 green, you know? So I like this card. I think it's a cool card, and you also see it coming back in a lot of tournaments. There are always decks that are playing the Berserk. So Berserk here at number 9. Now let's continue to number 8. And onwards we go to number 8. And on number 8, we find another green classic. It is Giant Growth. So 1 green for this instant. Target creature gains +3/+3 until end of turn. Like, this is your ideal answer to a lightning bolt. Someone wants to bolt you, you go, okay, Giant Growth, I'm just going to save my creature. It also works really well with that number 10 on the list, Berserk, right? Because you give a +3/+3, giving an extra power boost of +3. Then you play the Berserk, doubling that power boost again, so making it even better. And, you know, Giant Growth is just a classical green card, part of the boon cycle, of course, that had Lightning Bolt, Dark Ritual, Giant Growth, Ancestral Recall, and Healing Salve. I don't know what happened with Healing Salve, but life gain was a big deal. Anyway, I'm not sure if we're going to find Healing Salve in this list, but we do find Giant Growth here on number 8. It's just a classic, a super good card. Now let's continue to number 7. And on number 7, a card that maybe you expected to be actually higher on this list. I sometimes refer to it as the mini Black Lotus, the Black Lotus, and that is Dark Ritual. So Dark Ritual, 1 black to cast for this interrupt that simply reads, add 3 black mana to your mana pool. Now, there is, of course, this classic play, Dark Ritual into Hippie, and if your opponent doesn't have a bolt or a swords, it's pretty much game over for your opponent, right? Because you start taking out those cards out of the hand. Maybe if you're playing a format with Fallen Empires, you can even follow it up with a nasty Hymn to Turak. And I mean, your opponent won't just have any cards at all. But Dark Ritual is also good with, for example, talking about this card, Mind Twist. Also quite good against decks that play Armageddons against you or Land Destruction. Dark Ritual can get you back in there. Also quite good with a card like Drain Life. It's just very versatile. It is, of course, card disadvantage, right? Because you're getting 3 fast mana, but that is at the cost of a card. So if you then also play a card out with that, which you usually do, it is kind of a 2-for-1. So you want to make sure that what you do with the ritual has an impact. But yeah, I mean, this card has earned its marks in old school Magic. It is a phenomenal card. Also, love the art, by the way. So here at number 7, Dark Ritual. Now let's move on to the number of El Diablo, number 6. And on number 6, we find an absolute classic in Magic. Actually, all these cards are classics, right? But this is like a card that's still being referred to this day quite a lot in modern Magic. And that is a card called Counterspell. So Counterspell, 2 blue to cast. And of course, it reads counters target spell as it is being cast. So, I mean, this card you see in so many different decks, although the popularity is kind of going down a little bit. People seem to prefer playing more assertive, more active than playing more controlling. But of course, Counterspell in any like blue-white control deck is a card that you would definitely play at least 3 of, sometimes 4 of. Together with Mana Drain, you've got 5 counterspells with this effect. That can just be brutal against those control decks. And you also see them being played in more aggressive decks like Counterburn. You get your creature on quickly and you protect it with your counter magic, or you use it to kind of make sure that your opponent cannot play those powerful spells that they usually use to get back into it, like for example a Balance or a Mind Twist. Just counter it away. Nothing's going on here, nothing to see, counter it away. And what I love when you play Counterspell is if you have this turn, this opening turn with Island, Mox Sapphire, and you've got your counter magic up, then you can kind of see your opponent go, oh man, it's going to be one of these matches. You know, it's going to be one of those Clint Eastwood stare downs, cowboy stare downs. Although I think that in a lot of situations, just force the blue player to have it. Let him have it. Sometimes he will have it, but if he doesn't, it's going to make you feel really, really good. Anyway, this is Counterspell. Now let's continue to number 5. And on number 5, we find more counter magic, but this counter spell was so powerful that it had to be restricted. And then, of course, I'm talking about Mana Drain. So Mana Drain is actually an interrupt, just like Counter Spell, 2 blue from Legends, counters target spell. At the beginning of your next main phase, add X mana to your mana pool, where X is the casting cost of target spell. Now, mana drain, I love casting my mana drain to counter like a big fatty of my opponent, and then when it's my turn, play a huge Brain Geyser. Or it's also nice if your opponent like goes off of like Black Lotus, like early in the game, tries to like do something what they think is really cool. Maybe it's really cool, but then I spoil their party with my mana drain, and then when it's my turn, I play a Papa Modi. I love to. It hasn't happened often, but when it does, that gives me a better feeling than casting a Brain Geyser, because yes, Brain Geyser is probably better, but just casting a Papa Modi, what more do you want in life? Maybe also casting a Protocol Sorcerer, perhaps. I don't know. But anyway, mana drain here on number 5. The interrupt that is so good that it got restricted. Talking about restricted, there will be more restricted cards in this list, but actually not on number 4. Let's continue to number 4. And on number 4, a card that I think maybe many of you would have put in the top 3, maybe some of you even at number 1. It is a Lightning Bolt. So Lightning Bolt is 1 red for an instant that simply does 3 damage to any one target. This card is insanely powerful. This is so good. It is so good that after like the old school Magic, they never printed a card quite as powerful as Lightning Bolt, right? A card with just 1 red, instant speed, 3 damage. They made cards similar to it, but not of the same power level. And that kind of shows how good Lightning Bolt is. And Lightning Bolt, as I referred to earlier, it's really nice to combine with Fork, for example, have your like 5th Lightning Bolt in the deck. And if you play Counterburn, just if you play red, you usually always play with 4 bolts. And there are just so many decks playing a full playset of Lightning Bolt. And I think the good thing about direct damage and the good thing about Lightning Bolt is that early game, it can kind of kill those key creatures of your opponent, like a Birds of Paradise, or, if they go Dark Ritual into Hypnotic, Lightning Bolt will get you out of that mess and leave you actually stronger out of it, because it's card advantage for you at that point. But also later in the game, Lightning Bolt still has so much value. You can finish it with a Lightning Bolt. How often doesn't it happen that you're playing with like a white weenie strategy or a mono green strategy and you're just missing those vital points of damage? Lightning Bolt will get you there. So understandably so, a lot of those strategies splash Lightning Bolt because it delivers, it gives you victory. Early game is good, late game is good, mid game it's useful. There's always a target for Lightning Bolt. That is why it is so good, but it just didn't get into the top 3. What did? Well, let's find out. And on number 3, we see a very infamous card, a staple in Magic, like actually Lightning Bolt is as well. It was quite hard to choose where to put this card and where to put Bolt. In some of my lists, this card was actually 4, Bolt was 3, but I chose to put it here because it is so good. It is Swords to Plowshares. So Swords to Plowshares, an instant for 1 white that reads, target creature is removed from the game entirely. Return to owner's deck only when game is over. Creature's controller gains life points equal to the creature's power. So, at least it's also kind of, you're giving your opponent some life gain. So some decks prefer to play with Bolt actually over Swords because of that life gain clause. That depends, of course, on your strategy. But what's so good about Swords to Plowshares is that it exiles the creature. It is only 1 white. It is instant speed. And in some cases, you can also use it on your own creatures to gain life. And that can give you an extra turn. That extra turn can make you win the game. So it's also kind of versatile as well. Also, I like this when you, for example, have a balance in hand and you've got just 1 small creature you want to get rid of. You kill your own creature, play the balance, have a 1-sided Wrath. So there are just more ways to roam with this card, right? It's very versatile. Again, just like Lightning Bolt actually is quite versatile as well. There are many different ways of using that card. So Swords to Plowshares, Lightning Bolt, it was tough for me. I knew that I had to put those cards in pretty high up on the list, but what to put in the top 3, what to put on the number 4 spot, I didn't know. Let me know in the comments below if you're like, well, I think you should have put Bolt on 3, Swords on 4, and let me know why. Always interested to hear from you, but I've put it here in the top 3, and it's on 3 though. It's not on 2 or 1. Talking about that, let's continue to spot number 2. And on number 2, a card that, this is the reason people splash white. It's not the Swords to Plowshares. This card is the reason, and that is one of the only cards in Old School that has moats, that gives you options. That is why the card is so insanely strong. And of course, I am talking about the one, the only, Disenchant. So disenchant is an instant for 1 white and 1 that reads target enchantment or artifact must be discarded. Now, I've always felt as a young Timmy that this card was just really good because I also had Shatter in my collection. I'm like, wait a minute, Shatter only destroys an artifact, and this card has the same casting cost but is white, and I can choose between enchantment and artifact. Is that even fair? And they're both common? Like, I never understood why disenchant was a common. Like, this is so insanely good. And again, like I said, it's one of the first cards that has modes, right? You can choose, do you want to destroy an artifact or an enchantment? It's the modes. And later on in the game, I think wasn't it Visions, but maybe also Mirage already, where they started printing charms, cards that gave you options, like here, Vision Charm. That kind of became a new thing. But back in old school, this was quite like a thing, you know. It's really good. You also have, for example, Fissure in the Dark, which gives you the option between destroying a creature and a land, which I think is also quite good. But look at that casting cost. That's a casting cost of 5. This is disenchant. Look at the casting cost of disenchant. 1 white and 1. It just feels like an overpowered card. And I just, like I said, I remember as a Timmy, I already thought, is this fair? I've got my Shatter and my Disenchant, and Disenchant is just so much better. Now, before we go to the number 1 spot, I first would like to go to the honorable mentions. I've got one honorable mention I just want to mention. So let's, that sounds weird. Let's go there. Here is the honorable mention. And the honorable mention is a sideboard card that is used so often because it works against that annoying blue power. And I'm talking, of course, about Red Elemental Blast. So Red Elemental Blast is an interrupt for 1 red that reads counters a blue spell being cast or destroys a blue card in play. And of course, also you have the Blue Elemental Blast as well, but I specifically wanted to mention the Red Elemental Blast because it is so good against Ancestral Recall, Time Walk, Time Twister. Also, it helps you to counter a counter spell. It also gets rid of control magics. It's just an all-star against those blue cards. And the thing is, so many decks splash blue right now, right? Like Mana Drain, that's a card you see. Brain Geyser is a card you see. So Red Elemental Blast just has a lot of targets. So it's almost always in the sideboards. Blue Elemental Blast, of course, also very useful, for example, against burn decks like a huge Fireball. But Red Elemental Blast, when you look at like the tournament scene, it is really an all-star in there. So I just want to mention that here as an honorable mention here just before we go to number 1. And I think you already know what number 1 is. It starts with an A, I can tell you that. And the color is not red, I can tell you that as well. You know what? Let's go to numero uno of this list. Here we go, people. And number 1 is, of course, the blue powerhouse Ancestral Recall. 1 blue for an instant that simply reads, draw 3 cards or force opponent to draw 3 cards. I mean, this card is insane. It is insane. I mean, I've got nothing to add to it. Arguably, it's even the best card in Magic. Let me know, by the way, in the comments if you think it is the best card in Magic. But yeah, Ancestral Recall. What more can I say? I mean, it is so funny how old school Magic works, right? You can pay 1 mana and you can like prevent 3 damage with like a Healing Salve. Or you can pay 1 blue mana and you can draw 3 cards. It's like, where's the balance there? And yeah, it's insane. And you now have, which I kind of like. I sometimes watch like the modern tournaments of Magic, and I saw like this Is It Phoenix deck, I think it's called that way, where they were playing with Treasure Cruise. And Treasure Cruise, every time I got cast, I thought this card is insane. But I mean, that is basically an Ancestral Recall, right? And it's just crazy how good card advantage is. And I think back in the day, you know, we didn't realize how good card advantage was. And also, you know, back in the day, you have to realize the decks weren't as streamlined. You know, it wasn't as easy to get all the cards. So yeah, you draw 3 cards. But if like half of your deck, or actually 3/4 of your deck kind of sucks, drawing 3 cards is good, but not that good. You would rather like draw into your Sheevan Dragon and try to win the game, or your Vesuvan Doubleganger. But I mean, now, of course, in today's old school scene, Ancestral Recall is a key piece in almost every tournament winning deck. You know, it's just so insanely strong. So yeah, Ancestral Recall here on number 1. So this was my top 10 list of instants and interrupts. Here you can see all 10 of them. Thank you very much for joining me here for another top 10 list. If you want to see more lists, check out the playlist. There's probably an info card popping up right now. You can click on there. It'll take you to the playlist, or check out the description below. I'll probably put a link there to the playlist as well, so you can check out more top 10s. But before you go, please take a moment to like, share, and comment on this video. All these things are free and really help the channel move forward. Talking about moving forward, I also have my very own Patreon page. Check out patreon.com/TimmyTalks if you want to support the show financially and become a patron. And if you become a patron of the show, there are some nice perks. One of those is that your name will be mentioned at the end of the end scroll in every single video. What end scroll? This end scroll.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Early in the morning, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises. Early in the morning, putting in the longboat until he's sober, putting in the longboat until he's sober, putting in the longboat until he's sober. Early in the morning, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises. She rises early in the morning. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Early in the morning. Way hey up she rises. Way hey up she rises. Way hey up she rises early in the morning. What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Put him in the scouts to the host my son. Put him in the scouts to the host my son. Put him in the scouts to the host my son. Early in the morning, way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises early in the morning.
Igitus figitus somba kazee.